Okay, guys, so this video is going to be over creativity, thinking, problem solving. All right, so when we go look at thinking, okay, when we are studying cognition, we tend to focus on mental activities that are associated with thinking, knowing, and remembering. Okay, so how do we organize all of the things that we have into things that are going to help us think, problem solve, and come up with different creative solutions to different problems? Okay, so one way that we make sense of our environment and our experiences is to form concepts. Okay, a concept is a mental grouping of similar objects, events, or people. So, like the concept of a chair, that can involve lots of different things: a desk chair, a high chair, a recliner, a dining room chair. So, anything that is similar, okay, we fit into concepts of chair. Concepts are different from one concept to another. Obviously, like your concept of mom is different from your concept of dad, which is different from the concept of a soccer game or concepts of school. Okay, so it's just how we kind of group things together that are similar. Okay, based on concepts, we create prototypes. Okay, so what is the most typical example of a concept? Okay, so the best example of a category. So if you're looking at some animal that you see and it has feathers, well, you might tend to think of your typical concept of a bird, which for a lot of people, it's like a robin or a red bird. And so then you're going to compare it. So, like, what is your ideal? If you're looking at your prototypical image of a dog, it could be a German Shepherd. And so then you might compare all other creatures to a German Shepherd to see if there's a match. And then that's kind of like your prototype of a dog. Like, this is like the typical best correct example of something. Okay, when we're thinking, okay, there's also critical thinking, and you've probably heard this your entire school career. So it just means it's different things to different people. It's just basically how can you come up with different ideas, come up and get new information using concepts, prototype, other different thinking or creative activities. Okay, so speaking of creativity, okay, that's the ability to produce new and valuable ideas within a discipline. So whether it's art, music, architecture, whatever. Pretty much any profession that you're involved in that it uses problem solving, or you're going to have to come up with new ideas, new products, anything. You're going to have to use creativity at some point in your life. Okay. So when we are looking at creativity, we have Robert Sternberg, who you should recognize from when we talked about intelligences. Basically says that creativity has 5 different components. Okay, so you have expertise, and we talked about these in class. So there's expertise, there's imaginative thinking skills. You typically need to have a venturesome personality. Okay, you're not afraid to take risks. You need to be intrinsically motivated. Okay, so you need to be motivated to do it yourself, not somebody else motivated for you. And you need to have a creative environment that's going to help you foster these new ideas. So, in regards to creativity, there's 2 kinds of thinking that help influence your creativity, and that's convergent thinking and divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when you narrow things down to one solution, okay, or like a question only has one correct answer, right? So that tends to kind of, in some cases, limit creativity. Like there's only one correct answer to a multiple choice test. And then the second form of thinking tends to be more compatible with creativity, which is divergent thinking. It's when a problem has many possible responses. Okay, so you're expanding the number of solutions. Like, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? Okay, and so there's lots of different solutions or ideas that you can come up with that. Okay, so that's the difference between convergent and divergent thinking. Okay, talking about problem solving. Okay. With problem solving, there's been a lot of work with this in psychology and trying to study the results of thinking, like how people solve problems, looking at how they came up with their solutions. And so they've come up with a bunch of different problem solving solutions that tend to work best for people. Okay, so besides using things like trial and error, right? Like where you just, you try it, does it work? Okay, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's try something again. Okay, some other problem solving methods are things like algorithms, which these are logical rules or procedures. They guarantee one right solution, stuff that's very formulaic, like 1 + 2 = 3, 3 + 3 = 6. Okay, it's an algorithm. All right, then there's things like insight, which is like the aha thing. So it's the sudden realization. We talked about this a while back when we were looking at Wolfgang Kohler, when he was looking at problem solving with animals and like concept mapping and all that kind of stuff, which that's where he hung bananas out of reach of some chimpanzees. And for the most part, the chimps couldn't figure out how to get to the bananas. And then they realized there were boxes in the room, and then they started stacking the boxes one on top of the other and climbed them to reach the bananas. Okay, so that's kind of what insight is. There's also heuristics, and there's two types of heuristics. Heuristics are just rules of thumb. Okay, that's all that means. So when we're looking at heuristics, you generally, but not always, can use them to make a judgment for a situation. Okay, so there's, like I said, there's two types. There's availability heuristic and representative heuristic. You'll also see it as representativeness heuristic. Okay, so an availability heuristic, that's where you judge a situation based on examples of something similar that has come to mind. Okay, so your thinking is based on the information that you have available at the time. And so this could lead to incorrect conclusions because of like your personal examples. So it, like I said, it could influence your thinking. Representative heuristics, okay, it's judging a situation based on how similar the aspects are to the prototypes that you have already in your head. So it's forming thoughts on how well a topic matches your prototype. Okay, so like I said, there's pros and cons to both of those. All right, there's also intuition, which is kind of like insight, but not really. It's basically coming up with a conclusion without any thought. Okay, oh, like it was a lucky guess. And so basically it's knowing what you know without knowing how. Okay, it's just one of those things, right? That you just, oh, well, I just know. How do you know? Well, I just do. Okay. There are obstacles that you face in regards to problem solving. Okay, one of these is overconfidence. Okay, this is where people tend to be more confident than correct. Okay, so they're overconfident in their generalizations. They feel that they know what's right. Okay, and so that's going to cause problems for them also. Related to overconfidence, you're going to get belief perseverance. Okay, and that is clinging to your initial beliefs even after they've been proven wrong. So someone's told you you're wrong, you don't care, you're just going to like hold on to your beliefs. Okay. Then there's also, like, again, tying into this is the concept of confirmation bias, where you go and search for information that supports your perceptions and that's going to, you tend to ignore contradictory evidence. Okay. So, like when you go research, you just look for information that's going to help support what you already believe. Okay. So, all of these tend to be known as cognitive biases. So, it's when your thinking kind of veers you away from, more rational conclusions. Okay. There's also framing, which is basically how an issue is presented. And we've talked about this with statistics and stuff like that. It's like how you word questions that's going to cause people to respond or start thinking in a certain way. So, like an example for framing, if we're talking about a logic problem, and if I were to tell you that the majority of my students have been able to solve this problem, then it would probably tend to make you feel more confident. You might not get as frustrated. You might find it easier to come up with a solution to a logic puzzle. But if I told you that almost half of the students in my class never get the answer to the puzzle correct, then you would figure it was like really difficult, it was impossible, it could put up mental roadblocks, something like that. In both cases, like I'm basically telling you, that 51% of kids can solve the problem, but it depends on how you frame the question. And so that can, kind of like influence what it is that you're looking for. Okay, so that's basically everything on thinking and creativity and problem solving.